Welcome to 2021 and to this episode of Local Matters. We're starting the new year with confidence, safety, and empowerment. That's the tagline for Impact Boston, an awesome organization that offers classes in self-defense for all ages, identities, orientations, and abilities. Julie invited Impact staff Adriana Lee and Mike Perry to talk about the importance of managing our stress response in a crisis and how Impact is managing its own. Julie?
Welcome, Adriana Lee and Mike Perry from Impact. It's so nice to have you here today. Can you tell me about the mission of Impact Boston and how it all got started? Who'd like to field that one?
I'll start. I've been with the organization since, I want to say, February of 1991. It's a different organization today than it was back then. Back then it was called Model Mugging. Going further back, I believe, and I've heard different stories about the origins, it was like 70s. The program, for whatever reason, there was a group of martial artists who decided to come up with a program that would focus just on the self-defense needs of women. So not like martial artists, but like just everyday women. And the ideas around that was to make it more practical in the sense of like the types of danger concerns, like the way someone might attack someone versus like the way it would happen in a sporting event or in the dojo. Also, they wanted to do it in a way that was team taught. Like, so basically you'd have one person who was the coach and you'd have the other person who would act out the model mugger. He was modeling mugging behavior, I guess. Was terms a little misleading. I thought it was, yes, models can't make money all the time, but sometimes you can mug people to, make up for the times you're not actually modeling. So the first, when they started coming up with the class, they would have the mock assailants attack in a certain way, and the woman would go through the movements. And then as time went on, they said, hey, we should put on some gear so they can actually hit us full force, see how it goes. And it was at that point they realized, hey, they should do that from the beginning of the classes and have the armor the whole time. And as time went on, an engineer came along and developed really good armor, armor that like the instructors wearing the armor can take full like knees or elbows to the head or to the groin. And so the way the model would go is the coach would be there with the student on the mat the whole time. They got stuck or needed some guidance, and the mock assailant would mock through not just the actual physical part of attack, but maybe the vocalization, the stuff leading up to it. So they also found as time went on, sometimes just an assailant's voice could be enough to paralyze somebody, or maybe set them off where they're going physical before it would actually be self-defense. As time went on, back then, and even when I came on, it was like the goal was you're focusing on that specific population, and mostly during the actual physical altercation. So the measure of whether a student was getting what they showed up for was they could knock out a single unarmed assailant. There wasn't much about prevention, and there wasn't much about what you do in the immediate aftermath. As time went on, we expanded on that, and we started to open up more populations. By the time I got there, they did have a men's class. We ran some workshops. And then as we went, through the 90s and early 2000s, we started reaching out to other populations. And we started to really get more involved in things that lead up to a situation that may turn violent in the first place and how to prevent that. Adriana, do you have anything you'd like to speak to that end of it?
Yeah, I can sort of talk about, I've been with Impact as an instructor and a program coordinator for about almost 4 years now. And from where it's sort of started as an organization to where I'm seeing it really expand, like Mike said, is verbal and physical skills that all are designed to prevent violence, to prevent abuse, or stop something from happening, as well as giving students different tools to think about in the act of self-defense leading up to it, as well as what to do afterwards, getting support and taking care of yourself after a situation.
So what I found fascinating when I went on your website and really scrubbed through it, and like Mike said, what started as just self-defense has really come full circle, because self-defense isn't one act. I mean, you have courses about assertiveness and boundary setting. You have de-escalation, how to communicate with someone who's not treating you well. All those things that lead up to a point of impact, which obviously is what you want to avoid. Is that correct? You want to avoid having to have any kind of altercation one-on-one.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if you looked at self-defense and broke it into self-protection, you could say there's like 3 phases: before, during, and then after the event. And if you're really good in the first phase, you'll never see the other 2 phases. And the other 2 phases is where all the aftermath, where all the damage happens. So it's just like defensive driving. It's so much better to see what's going on, recognize someone who's swerving, and then not get in the accident, as opposed to knowing you have an airbag and going, hey, I'm all set, and driving around like this, you know?
Right, no, exactly. And I loved how you just put that. So before the pandemic hit, you clearly had most of these courses in person, correct?
Yes.
And now you've had to adjust some of them to being online. How do you differentiate what can go online and what really has to be in person, and how do you deal with that in the circumstances we're in now?
Yeah, we've actually been pretty lucky. In the beginning stages of COVID, when we were sort of looking out, into the future and thinking about what can we teach, what's optimal to teach online, what are we missing? Because Impact is still involved with role play and experiential learning and being in person, we actually found that we were able to adapt almost all of the skills we teach online. So we focus primarily on verbal skills and those preventative measures and preventative critical thinking skills as our first line of self-defense and safety, especially when it comes to our self-advocacy programs that outlines most of our work. So really what we noticed that was missing was the experience of, like Mike said, getting to practice full force strikes and hitting a suited assailant. But what we found is that students can still practice skills in the air with a coach and with instructors practicing the skills on Zoom in our own environments. So what we did was we worked with safety measures in COVID at a distance to film videos of different scenarios and different self-defense situations. So in all of our classes, we showed those videos to give a little bit more in-person context. And then we walk through the steps through discussions, students get to ask questions, and then they practice those skills, whether it's how to hold your body in a confident, strong stance, how to use your words in a self-defense situation, and even a lot of the physical skills that we teach, practicing in the air and sort of getting the mechanics in a class. So we've been very lucky that we can teach the majority of our classes online and have been doing so since COVID has started.
And when COVID is over, are you going to be able to bring all those students that you've had strictly just online and bring them in and have them actually show you in person how they can do these things? And I would think that would be really good for them too.
I'll add that. For some groups, that is actually the plan. So by the time we would show up and just do it, because you can't replace that experience. Some groups or some folks, maybe not. Yeah, one of the benefits of doing stuff online is it made maybe these classes more palatable. There's more people are at different levels in terms of like how invested they are, And for some people, doing a Zoom class is doable. Maybe showing up to a class isn't. And then there's also regional problems. I mean, one of the benefits of Zoom, you can teach anyone on the planet if they can get a connection.
Right.
You're kind of stuck to the people who can make it to your class. So even the folks who show up just to do a Zoom class, some of the classes don't really have much of a physical component. We've actually been able to focus on it, like adrenaline management, the de-escalation classes. These are all classes that people can probably get what they need just from doing the Zoom class. In fact, after the pandemic's over, we still plan on keeping some of the Zoom classes, but we still will get back on the mat and pick up and resume that type of training as well. Sure.
And how did you get into self-defense training, Mike?
I grew up in a neighborhood where it was, late 60s, early 70s, and there was a lot of violence, and there was stuff in the house, outside the house, so. And it was also right around the time the whole martial arts boom was hitting, so I got involved with that. And I figured, I'll learn how to move like Bruce Lee, and I'll just beat up everybody who comes at me. And the way it actually served my self-defense wasn't so much in the fighting, although I did have a fair amount of fights growing up in that neighborhood. But the bigger thing it did for me is it took me out of the neighborhood. And while I was practicing doing martial arts, I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't involved in crimes and stuff like that, which actually was the real way it served my self-defense. And as I was doing that, I was like my young 20s. I was very much into that. I was already a black belt in a couple different arts. I saw an ad in a bookstore in Chinatown where I was buying more self-defense books and training methods stuff. It was around the time the whole cottage industry came up with videotapes of all these different, it was before the internet. I know it's hard to believe.
I remember.
Yeah. And the ad was, it said, it was back to those model mugging. It said, model mugging needs a few good men. And I had a picture of the student instructor kind of coming at a woman, and she was kicking him. And it was misleading. I thought I was going to be the guy on the side telling her, kick him harder. It didn't have arrows pointing to the guy in the armor saying, this is you,
Yeah.
Too exciting there looking at the bottom of people's sneakers. But I was interested, came down. I was pretty much blown away with there was a graduation process they had. It was the final class, and you got to see the students going through. It wasn't rehearsed or anything. How they actually could hit full force and how they were, going through the scenarios would look as realistic as you could get while still maintaining safety. And I was pretty much blown away. And well, here I am today. I guess I liked what I was doing.
Well, and it works. It clearly is very effective. Adriana, you're a program coordinator and an instructor. How did you get into this?
Absolutely. So I actually found Impact by accident. So I had been working for our affiliate agency, Triangle Inc., which is an agency that serves individuals with disabilities. I had been working as a coordinator there. As a result of the partnership, we were allowed to take Impact classes for free. And this was about 4 years ago. At the time, I had just started getting into basic traditional Chinese Kung Fu and sort of trying my hand at self-defense there. And while it was really great and it served its purpose for me to learn strikes and learn to feel more in my body, I was really looking for more, sort of dealing with the adrenaline management as well as the trauma. And so I had found the class through working for Triangle. I took a weekend 20-hour women's self-defense course. And honestly, that's sort of what caused me to fall in love with Impact. There was something more to my experience of being able to deal with my personal trauma and still deal with that fear and defend myself that the class taught me. So from there, I just became really interested in it, and I applied to become an instructor. And while that has been an amazing feat, it's still a journey that I'm going through in the process of working with students and learning even more about self-defense than honestly I thought I ever could.
That's wonderful. And overall, what I found just so fascinating about this whole program is exactly what Mike said. It's the before, during, and after, the triad, and how as many preventative measures should be taken as possible so that you never go from the before to the during. I mean, so you stay in the before and you don't get to the during and to the after. We could probably talk for hours about this, but I'm going to have to cut it short. I know that your organization aims to protect people from being in a bad situation, but you also help people that have been in and are in abusive relationships right now and how to deal with that. Because of the pandemic, that is clearly skyrocketed, unfortunately, in our society. What have you seen, and how have you dealt with that?
So absolutely, we've definitely seen an increase, not just in the news, but through the organizations that we work with and the statistics that we already know, especially about gender-based violence, but also for all genders and sort of all situations, how COVID has created a sense of exclusion from our normal activities and from society and from a lot of our support networks. And so what we've noticed is that even more students than normal were reaching out to us looking for ways to get help or support themselves. As Impact self-defense instructors, because we don't, as an organization, offer our own therapy or emergency services, we work with a number of organizations that offer those daily. So while I can't give immediate advice to what's going to work for every individual, I can direct for those looking for help, whether it's immediate or long-term. If you visit our website at www.impact.boston.org, there's a list of resources both for immediate as well as transitional services. To name a few, there's access to the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, going out more nationally. There's the Disabled Persons Protection Commission, Jane Doe, national suicide hotlines, as well as domestic violence agencies that help those individuals that are in crisis.
That's excellent. And it's all tied together. All of this is just, the mental health of it, the stress, the physical well-being of people is so tenuous right now. What a wonderful organization you have. Again, it's Impact in Boston, and we'll put up all the information. We thank you so much for joining us today. This was great, and thank you very much, and have a really good and wonderful 2021, let's hope.
Thank you.
Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Julie, Adriana, and Mike. For more information on Impact Boston, visit impactboston.org.